Elena stood in the bustling cafeteria of her office, her eyes flitting over the crowd. It was just another Monday, the smell of coffee wafting through the air, mixed with the lingering scent of yesterday's lunch. As she sipped her green tea, she noticed a man at the far end of the room, sitting alone at a table by the window. He wore an unusual tie, bright orange with polka dots, a far cry from the muted tones of the corporate world surrounding him. "Look at that tie," she chuckled softly, nudging her colleague Nancy. The two women giggled softly, but the laughter held an edge. It felt safe, harmless, but something in her gut twisted. Perhaps it was the way he seemed oblivious to her jabs. The man at the table didn't seem to notice as he focused intently on his laptop. His brow was furrowed, deep in thought. Elena's laughter faded as her curiosity peaked. Who was he? Why did he look so out of place? As the seconds ticked by, she glanced at him again. He was older than most of her colleagues, probably in his 40s. A solid build, he looked sharp despite the tie. Yet at that moment, the tie stole all his attention. In a sea of gray suits and bland ties, he stood out. The vibrant colors contrasted with the dull environment, and it made her uneasy. "Let's go say hi," Nancy suggested, nudging her elbow. Elena hesitated, fighting the urge to turn back to the safety of their usual conversation. But feeling a rush of boldness, she shrugged and headed toward the man's table. Her heart raced. It was one thing to mock him from afar, another to face him up close. "Nice tie," she said, her tone drenched in sarcasm. The words tumbled out, a shield to hide her own insecurities. Perhaps she thought he would laugh it off. Everyone loves a good joke, right? But instead, he didn't look up immediately. He continued typing away, and for a moment, she felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her. Had she crossed a line? Just when she was about to turn back, he looked up. His eyes were calm and steady as they met hers. "Thank you," he replied simply. His voice was deep but warm, a contrast to her mocking tone. There was no irritation, just an air of quiet confidence that enveloped him. The kind of confidence that made you feel small, even if you didn't quite understand why. As she stood there, suddenly feeling foolish, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The loud chatter around them dimmed slightly. She glanced back at Nancy, who wore a curious expression, clearly intrigued. He gestured to the seat across from him. Elena hesitated. What if he was just the type to wallow in self-pity? Or maybe he didn't care about company at all, but his gaze held her there, anchoring her in a strange way. So she sunk into the seat, trying to regain her footing in this unexpected situation. The two exchanged pleasantries, and as they talked, she felt her defenses begin to lower. His name was Michael, and he worked in the company's marketing department. They discussed the stresses of corporate life, and with each passing moment, she found herself more drawn to him, despite his flashy accessory. He shared stories of his experiences in the industry, filled with passion and dedication. His words painted pictures of his journey, and the tie wasn't just a random choice. It was a statement, an expression of his personality and creativity. Suddenly, Elena felt an urge to speak again, but in a way she hadn't anticipated. "I'm sorry for mocking your tie," she said softly, looking him in the eyes. Michael smiled, a genuine grin that softened his features. "It's all right. Sometimes people don't understand the message behind what we choose to wear." She could feel the shift in their conversation as something clicked, a connection. The laughter and teasing she initially felt slowly transformed into respect. She began to find beauty in the odd color, the polka dots. Maybe the brightness represented his bravery in a world where many choose to blend in. As the conversation flowed, Elena became aware of the murmurs around them. Soft whispers filled the air, drawing her attention away from their shared moment. It began to rise, like a swell of whispers converging into a current. She turned slightly toward the source and noticed the staff at nearby tables glancing their way. She overheard someone say, their tone laced with disbelief. "You've got to be kidding me," another voice chimed in. Elena's cheeks flushed as the reality of the attention dawned on her. Why were they whispering about him? Curiosity danced in her mind, but she didn't want to break the spell that had settled between her and Michael. She asked, lowering her voice as if trying not to disturb their moment. He sighed softly, his expression shifting to a thoughtful frown. "I guess you could say I'm known around here." Elena was taken aback. She hadn't considered that he might be someone significant. "Well, that explains the whispers," she said, turning her attention back to the table of murmuring employees. "Yes," he acknowledged, a twinkle of amusement in his eyes. She leaned in closer, intrigued. Michael's gaze drifted away for a moment, as if reflecting on a past he wasn't quite ready to share. "When you stand out, you attract attention. Not all of it is good. Some people will admire you, others will despise you simply for being different." She felt the weight of his words wrap around her, and in that moment she realized how easy it was to judge without understanding. Here was a man who had chosen to stand out in a sea of conformity, yet it had come with its own challenges. "I admire that," Elena admitted. He nodded, but a sense of heaviness lingered in the air. "It does, but sometimes the journey is lonely." Those words resonated deeply within her. All her life she had played it safe, blending in and keeping her distance from anything or anyone that threatened her comfort zone. She had laughed at him and mocked him without a second thought, but here he was, showing grace and strength in the face of her ridicule. Just then, a loud laugh erupted from a nearby table, pulling her back to reality. "Look at Michael," a man announced, his eyes twinkling with mischief. Elena felt a rush of heat fill her face. She wanted to shrink away, to scurry back to her safe little bubble. Instead, she glanced at Michael. He raised an eyebrow, and to her surprise, he laughed along. "Guess it's just another day in the office for me," he said, the warmth returning to his voice. She was in awe of how he handled the mocking, the judgment. "You know, you could just tell them to knock it off," she suggested, half joking, half earnest. He replied, still smiling, "They're entitled to their opinions. What matters is how I feel about myself." In that moment, Elena made a silent vow. She wanted to be more like Michael. How brave it was to own who he truly was, to express himself without fear of judgment. Perhaps the conversations she had with her colleagues wouldn't always be about fitting in. Maybe they could tell stories instead, stories that could challenge the norms, spark laughter, and inspire change. As she stared across the table, she felt the heaviness of the moment start to lift. Giving Michael her full attention felt like a deep-seated acknowledgement of her own flaws. She realized that her initial mockery came from a place of insecurity, a way to mask her own fears about standing out. She mused, a playful smile spreading across her face. Michael's laughter bubbled up, genuine and hearty. "I'd love to," they laughed together, filling the air with a sense of camaraderie. Elena felt a brand new energy bubbling within her, one that called for authenticity and acceptance. She couldn't wait to explore and share her own stories, the spectacular flaws that constituted her true self. From that day forward, the orange tie became a symbol of transformation, not just for Michael, but also for Elena. She had started to see the world differently. She realized there was beauty in standing out, in expressing oneself openly and accepting the quirks that make each one of us unique. That vibrant polka dot tie didn't just belong to Michael anymore. It had woven its way into her heart, inspiring her to embrace her own colors, her own voice. The cafeteria buzzed around them, but for that moment, time stood still as the whispers transformed into laughter, a narrative that was just beginning to unfold. In the heart of a bustling city, a woman named Clara found herself in an unexpected standoff. It was the monthly staff meeting at a corporate office, a room filled with polished shoes and muted conversations. The air buzzed with tense energy as everyone prepared to present their quarterly reports. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, Clara sat among her colleagues, her eyes scanning the room. Then they landed on him. Mark, a newcomer to the team, sat across the long conference table, wearing a bright green tie decorated with sailboats. It was bold and vibrant, unlike the sea of gray and blue that surrounded him. Clara couldn't help herself. With a glance at her friend Maddie, she leaned over and whispered, "Look at that tie. What is he trying to do?" Maddie chuckled softly, yet Clara could feel a small thrill at the laughter theirs was stirring. Her words carried the lightness of a joke, but there was a weight behind them, a desire to mask her own feelings about this newcomer who had quickly emerged as the odd one out. Mark caught Clara's gaze just then. The amusement faded from her expression as she noticed something in his eyes. He was unbothered, focused on his notes. Despite her jab, he didn't seem to take offense. In fact, he looked confident, calm, something she couldn't quite figure out. But the moment faded as Clara brought her focus back to the meeting. The boss started talking, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that she had just crossed a line. That small moment of mockery felt like more than just banter. It sliced through the room like a knife and left a prickling sensation behind. Flash forward to the break after the meeting, and Clara found herself in the kitchen, pouring another cup of coffee. The scent of dark roast filled the air, blending strangely with the quiet tension that lingered. She leaned against the counter, glancing around. Her coworkers gathered in small clusters, and Clara caught snippets of conversation, their tones conspiratorial. One of the women said, her voice barely above a whisper. Clara's ears perked up. Was this about him? She turned slightly, trying to absorb what was being said. "Exactly. Who wears a tie like that in a serious meeting? He's just asking for it," a man added, laughter threading through his words. Clara felt a mix of vindication and guilt. The staff murmurs became a dance of sound. Some were amused, while others simmered with annoyance. The chuckles resonated against the walls like echoes of insecurity, the need to unite against the one who dared to stand out. Yet there was something about it that made her stomach turn. Mark wandered into the kitchen, oblivious to the judgment ricocheting around him. He casually filled his water bottle, focusing on the task at hand. A moment later, he turned to the group, flashing a warm smile. The earnestness of his question hung in the air, combining curiosity with sincerity. Clara could feel her cheeks flame, but part of her admired Mark's bravery. Not everyone could enter a room filled with judgment and look unfazed. But then the whispers grew louder, and Clara barely caught her breath as someone responded. "Just your tie, Mark. It's..." Laughter erupted at the table, but not from Mark. He stood silent, the smile faltering slightly. She could see the hurt flicker across his expression, almost imperceptibly, but Clara felt it like a punch to the gut. He took a beat, inhaling deeply before replying, "Thanks for noticing." The room went silent, and for an instant, Clara saw him through a different lens. He wasn't just an oddball in a strange tie. He was boldly presenting himself while others clutched tightly to their safe, muted colors. There was something oddly brave about that, but Clara found herself embroiled in the moment. Fleeting whispers of encouragement rippled through her mind. Are you really going to just sit there? Are you the person to let this happen? She pushed the thoughts away. Instead, she joined in with an uncomfortable laughter, not fully knowing how to disentangle herself from her earlier mockery. But as the laughter faded, Clara watched as Mark turned, ready to leave the kitchen and the murmurs behind. Something shifted in her gut. The laughter that once came so easily now felt like a chain, like a ball and chain anchoring them to unkindness. Clara called out before she even realized the words were leaving her mouth. His hand froze on the doorknob. Maybe the tie isn't what I thought. He turned around, surprised. He asked, tilting his head slightly, scanning her for sincerity. In that moment, she could have lied. She could have taken the safe route, the easy way out, but instead, something deeper moved within her. Yeah, it stands out. Hope flickered in his eyes, battling the uncertainty that clung to him. Thanks, I get that it's different, but I choose to wear things that make me happy, he said, voice steady. His words struck her like a revelation. There was a power in choosing joy, even when the world tried to box you in. The heaviness hung in the air, and Clara watched as he eased back into a smile that radiated warmth. Then something miraculous happened. A few colleagues who had been standing nearby began to shift their expressions too. A nod came from one woman and she approached Mark. I like it too, she said, her tone brimming with newfound kindness. The shift was palpable. Clara felt a wave of release rush over her. It was as if their small kitchen had transformed, moving from judgment to something resembling acceptance. They chuckled again, but this time it was different. It was inclusive, a gentle reminder that everyone had their quirks. Over the next few weeks, Clara noticed changes around the office, ripples forming into broader waves. Mark became a central figure, known not just for his unique style, but for his ideas and innovations. Employees gathered around him, drawn to the vibrancy he exuded. The tie became legendary, not just a piece of clothing, but a symbol of individuality, creativity, and courage. Clara found herself connecting with him more and more. They began to share lunches, laugh about inside jokes, and conspire on projects. Something shifted within her. She started questioning her own comfort zone. What if she embraced her quirks as passionately as he did? One afternoon, Mark was fiddling with his tie while brainstorming ideas. What do you think, Clara? He gestured toward a colorful presentation behind him. She grinned, definitely more flair, more fun. As they worked side by side, Clara's admiration for Mark grew. He'd become a symbol of strength for her, showing how one vibrant tie could ignite a movement. They both discovered that their differences made them stronger, weaving a beautiful tapestry right there in their office. But in a turn of events, the day came when Clara accidentally let it slip. It was at another meeting, another round of presentations. Mark stood up, eloquence pouring from his mouth as he presented their brainstorming ideas. She could see the pride lighting up the room, yet something deep within her stirred. When it was her turn to present, she felt the weight of her initial mockery pressing down on her shoulders. But Clara took a deep breath, a wave of confidence flooding through her. Before I begin, I just want to say that it's okay to be different, she began, locking eyes with Mark, who looked both surprised and intrigued. Mark has definitely reminded us of that in more ways than one, starting with that sailboat tie. The conference room fell nearly silent, eyes glued to her. Clara could feel heat rushing to her cheeks, but this time she wasn't backing down. Our individuality will lead us to creative solutions we never imagined. A murmur of agreement washed through the room. Clara felt a wave of support, and within moments she saw nods of acknowledgement. Mark beamed, his appreciation dancing across his features. The staff's murmuring had found its purpose. It was no longer judgment, but recognition. They began sharing their own quirks and anecdotes, celebrating their individuality. Clara soaked it in, feeling a warmth spread through her as laughter and stories transformed the once sterile conference room. Days turned into weeks and months, and the office evolved into a sanctuary of creativity and collaboration. Mark's tie approach became a catalyst for change. His boldness inspired others to express themselves fearlessly. And just like that, the tie had birthed a movement. One day, as they sat around their favorite cafe for lunch, Clara leaned back, sensing the vibrancy of the space. He chuckled, the sound rich with warmth. Clara nodded, realizing how life had a way of surprising them. The man she once mocked had become a friend, a mentor, and a beacon of courage. The journey from disdain to admiration, from mockery to friendship, unfolded like the colors of a tie, unpredictable yet beautiful in its own right. From that day on, whenever anyone mentioned the tie, Clara felt a swell of pride, not just for Mark, but for the collective power of transformation that could rise from understanding and acceptance. Sometimes it started with just a few words or a compliment, flickering into something that could change the world. And ironically, it all began with a silly tie. The boardroom was tense, filled with a sea of gray suits and serious faces. At the center of it all was Sam, a newcomer whose presence seemed to ripple through the serious atmosphere like a stone thrown into a still pond. Today, the spotlight was on him for his first quarterly presentation, but it was something else that caught everyone's attention: a tie, bright purple with a bold paisley pattern, clashing spectacularly against the dull backdrop of the corporate setting. As Clara sat there, sipping her lukewarm coffee, she couldn't help herself. she whispered to her colleague Jenna, trying to stifle her laughter. A few others around the table barely concealed their smirks, exchanging glances that spoke volumes. It felt good to share a laugh, even if it came at someone else's expense. Jenna leaned closer, a mischievous sparkle in her eyes. "He looks ridiculous." Clara's words hung in the air, sharp as glass. She found a certain satisfaction in their banter, but a small voice in the back of her mind warned her she was crossing a line. Sam stood at the front of the room, flipping through his slides, oblivious to the quiet laughter. He was absorbed in his presentation, detailing complex statistics and strategic plans while glancing down at his notes. Every so often he'd look up, and Clara felt the weight of his gaze as if it sought to pull her in rather than push her away. Then, amidst the calculated professionalism of numbers and forecasts, Clara noticed something unexpected, a twinkle of determination in Sam's eyes. It was sincere, youthful even, and it clashed with the mockery she had directed his way. Each time he spoke, the room shifted slightly. There was a surprisingly grounded authority to him, and Clara felt her laughter lose its luster. As he continued, a flicker of admiration rose within her, but she quickly brushed it aside. After all, how could she respect someone whose taste in ties clearly defied all fashion rules? Moments passed in a haze, but the air became thicker as whispers about Sam reverberated around the table. "Did you see that tie?" someone muttered. Clara's heart raced, an involuntary guilt contingent upon the laughter she had once shared with her colleagues. Then came the ultimate moment of reckoning. As Sam wrapped up his presentation, he asked for questions. A hand shot up from the back of the room. Mark, one of the senior executives. "Sam, great presentation, but can we talk about your tie for a second?" Laughter erupted, and Clara felt a rush of shame wash over her. This joke felt less like harmless fun and more like a stake driven through Sam's resolve. A crowning moment of humiliation laid bare. She glanced at him, hoping to see that same twinkle in his eye, but instead it vanished. The confidence that had radiated from him moments ago dimmed, and all that remained was a faint shadow of disappointment. Yet Sam didn't retreat. Instead, he took a deep breath and straightened his posture. "I chose this tie because it reminds me to be bold, to push boundaries, and to take risks," he said, his voice steady, though laced with an undercurrent of defiance. Silence filled the room as the impact of his words permeated through the laughter. Suddenly, Clara realized that Sam wasn't just wearing a tie, he was wearing his identity. Something sparked within her, pushing away the remnants of her mockery. But before she could uncover her own thoughts, the murmurs bubbled back up. "What an oddball," someone whispered. The comment kicked her square in the gut. Fanning the flames of mockery seemed to be the preferred pastime among the staff, and she felt the need to bury herself under her own corporate facade. As the meeting wrapped and Clara walked out, her mind raced. The mocking laughter echoed in her ears, accompanied by a bizarre mix of guilt and intrigue. Why had Sam chosen a tie like that? What emboldened him to stand in front of an entire boardroom and own it? Days passed, and Clara found herself unable to shake those questions. The whispers about Sam continued, and she couldn't help but eavesdrop. It felt as though every conversation in the office revolved around him, followed by fits of laughter, or "Did you hear how he handled that comment?" Yet with each wave of laughter, Clara's growing admiration moved against her better judgment. Their next meeting came around faster than Clara anticipated. This time, she chose to be quiet. She couldn't join in the mockery anymore, not after everything she had witnessed. She found herself leaning closer to Sam's words as he presented, and once again she noticed that same twinkle of resolve in his eyes. His confidence was contagious, reminding her of an ideal she had buried deep inside. During the breaks, Clara observed how Sam interacted with others. While many continued to snicker from the sidelines, Sam made a point of engaging with colleagues, bringing warmth to conversations. He complimented Lisa on her project, asked Miguel about his weekend, and even laughed at the jokes being aimed at him. Somehow he knew how to pivot from the negativity, threading movement through the office dynamics with effortless grace. Meanwhile, Clara wrestled her own conscience. She found herself at a crossroads. Either she would continue to rush home every evening feeling guilty, or she could find a way to break the cycle. A plan began to form in her mind, spurred by the courage she was witnessing in Sam. If he could embrace his uniqueness, why couldn't she? One day, as they stood in the break room, Clara finally mustered the courage to speak to Sam. "Hey, Sam," she started, her voice steady but nerves fluttering. "I wanted to apologize for laughing at your tie. I realize now it's more than just a piece of fabric." He looked at her, taken aback, and then nodded slowly. "Thank you, Clara, it's okay." Her heart raced. "Can you tell me more about that? I mean, how do you find the courage to just..." Sam leaned against the counter, a thoughtful grin flickering on his face. "It's about believing in your own worth." He gestured to his tie, his enthusiasm contagious. "I wear this to remind myself that different is good." In that moment, the laughter that had once spilled forth from Clara transformed into a sense of admiration. Sam was more than just that eye-catching tie. He was a source of inspiration. They spent the rest of the break chatting, diving deep into their shared thoughts, and realizing how deeply they both needed to break free from nondescript boxes society put them in. In the weeks that followed, Clara decided to embrace her own quirkiness, starting small. The next day at work, she wore a bright red cardigan that she'd shied away from before, feeling a slight thrill as she entered the office. To her surprise, people noticed and even complimented her on it. "That's a bold choice, Clara." Someone cheered. Each day, Clara began layering her individuality over her comfort zone. She felt lighter, free from the heavy burden of others' judgments. As time went on, Clara and Sam became unlikely allies, reminding each other daily that life was about joy, authenticity, and the ties that bind both literally and figuratively. They would critique each other's outfits playfully, lifting their coworkers' spirits as a united front against the pervasive cynicism dwelling in the office. But there was one final hurdle Clara needed to jump over. The ultimate test of her transformation awaited her. It took place during the company's annual gala, an event where the glittering gowns and sharp tuxedos made everyone feel a bit more alive, electric with the atmosphere of glamour and sophistication. As Clara prepared for the gala that evening, she stood before her mirror, wondering what to wear. She had grown to love breaking boundaries, yet the fear of judgment still tugged at her. What if people laughed? What if it wasn't enough? She took a breath and decided to wear something unusual, something only she would appreciate: an emerald green dress that danced along the floor. When she arrived at the event, the vibrant color of her dress caught everyone's eye. She felt liberated, spinning and twirling through the crowd alongside the twinkling lights that reflected off the dance floor. It didn't take long for whispers to start swirling. "Have you seen her dress?" As she caught sight of Sam across the room, her heart buzzed with excitement. He was wearing a tie that mirrored her dress, a playful nod to her journey. When he spotted her, his eyes lit up and he raised his glass in appreciation. It felt monumental, a celebration of everything they had both dared to embrace. As the night transitioned from subtle mingling to vibrant dancing, Clara looked around at her colleagues, feeling as if she was seeing them for the first time. Laughter that had once felt so sharp now hung in the air differently, a confirmation of respect rather than mockery. That evening, as Clara and Sam wrapped up their conversations, she leaned in, filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done this without you, Sam." He smiled and his eyes sparkled again, that same confidence shining bright. "It's a journey, Clara." Together, they danced jubilant and free, each twirl a testament to evolution, to bravery, and to the beauty of being unapologetically unique. Clara finally understood what Sam had been teaching all along. Sometimes the boldest ties aren't just found in our clothing, but in the courage we wear proudly on our sleeves. The room buzzed with anticipation, the air crackling like static before a storm. It was the annual corporate team meeting where every decision made rippled through the company. Clara sat at the long, rectangular table, surrounded by colleagues clad in the usual drab gray and navy suits. They blended together like shadows cast on a cloudy day. But then he walked in. Sam strolled through the door and the energy shifted. He was different not just in stature but in style. Draped around his neck was a tie bursting with color, a brilliant orange adorned with whimsical penguins. Clara's mouth fell open, a mix of disbelief and amusement twisting in her gut. Who wore a tie like that to such a serious affair? As he confidently approached the front of the room, Clara leaned toward Jenna, her closest confidant in the office. What is he thinking? The words tumbled out before she could stop them, laughter bubbling just beneath the surface. Jenna snorted, shaking her head with a smirk. The two exchanged glances, their laughter mingling with those around them. As if on cue, other members of the team began whispering, their chuckles ricocheting off the walls like darts. The noise was enough to pull Sam's attention from the projector screen. He paused, scanning the room, a flicker of confusion. Was that laughter aimed at him? Clara didn't see fear in his eyes. Instead, it was a steely resolve, maybe even a hint of defiance. He cleared his throat and launched into his presentation, steady and professional. Sam's words danced through the room, driven by passion and enthusiasm, yet Clara found her focus drifting. She could glimpse the subtle way he used hand gestures, the way his face lit up when talking about his ideas. It was both captivating and alarming. After all, how could someone clad in such a ridiculous tie command so much attention? As he spoke, the whispers slowly died down, yet Clara couldn't shake the feeling that she had crossed a line, dragging her colleagues along with her. When Sam paused to take a breath, someone at the back piped up, "Nice tie, Sam." Laughter erupted once more, but Clara felt a pang in her chest. Something shifted in Sam's demeanor, the light in his eyes dimming ever so slightly. The room fell silent, the shift palpable. Clara listened, surprised by the strength that emerged from him. He wasn't backing down, he stood tall against the barrage of taunts, owning his space, his presence. But as the moment passed, it seemed that the laughter returned, lingering in the air like a smoky aftertaste. After the meeting, the murmurs picked up again. Clara poured herself a cup of coffee in the break room, inhaling deeply to steady her racing thoughts. Someone remarked. Clara felt a pang of guilt coursing through her. How many times had she participated in the mockery? The laughter had settled into a comfortable routine, yet it left her feeling hollow. Each time she tore into Sam's choice of attire, she felt her own insecurities echoing in the background. As days turned into weeks, Sam's colorful tie became a consistent topic of conversation. Surrounded by a sea of gray, the vibrant orange and the whimsical patterns contrasted sharply, transforming him into a target. Clara stood by, torn between lingering guilt and the comfort of camaraderie that came with laughing at him. "Did you see him today? He looked like he just stepped off a theme park ride," one colleague remarked, and laughter ensued. It felt like a ritual, but with every joke, Clara's initial amusement faded, replaced by uncertainty. Then one afternoon, a major project landed on the team's desk. The pressure was palpable, tension building as they scrambled to deliver. All hands were on deck, and Clara found herself working late with Sam. The office felt oddly intimate in those late hours, shadows stretching long and the fluorescent lights buzzing softly. She ventured, breaking the silence that hung heavy between them. Sam paused, looking thoughtful, then shrugged his shoulders. "For me, it represents courage." His eyes sparkled with conviction. Clara studied him closely. Beneath the playful exterior of his tie, she saw layers of determination and self-awareness that resonated within her. He chuckled, leaning back in his chair. Not really. Her heart skipped. She hadn't considered that his resilience could be a source of empowerment, not just for him, but for everyone around him. Suddenly, she felt a shift inside, a stirring of something deeper. They talked for hours, finding common ground between their experiences, sharing their dreams and fears. As the deadline approached, Sam's passion infected Clara. His colorful outlook opened her eyes to the possibilities outside her own safe, gray box. Gradually, with every late night spent together, her laughter at his tie faded, replaced by respect and admiration. Then, during a particularly tough brainstorming session, Clara hesitated. She had an idea, a vibrant one that danced like flames in her mind, but she clutched her notepad tightly, the fear of ridicule gnawing at her edges. Sam asked, his eyes warm and inviting. She questioned, uncertain. He challenged softly. With his encouragement, Clara spoke up, proposing the concept. As the words spilled out, the room shifted. It felt alive, electric. The team rallied around her idea, sparks igniting the atmosphere with excitement. In that moment, she knew she was stepping into her own light. Sam's boldness had cracked open something within her, allowing her to share her unique contributions without fear. Weeks passed, and as their project set the office ablaze with creativity, Clara and Sam's bond deepened. They became a dynamic duo, challenging the status quo while spurring each other forward. She understood now that the tie was not just an accessory. It was a symbol of authenticity, a fearless emblem of individuality that echoed through their work. At an all-hands meeting after the successful project launch, Clara glanced around the room. The atmosphere was charged, but her gaze landed solely on Sam. Amidst the applause, she found her voice rising above the crowd. "Can we take a moment to acknowledge something important?" Round of applause erupted, and Clara was taken aback when she felt a wave of solidarity wash over her colleagues. "We often forget that our differences are what make us stronger. What you wear is an extension of who you are," she continued, glancing directly at Sam, who now wore that tie with pride. The murmurs shifted into applause once more, and Clara felt a knot within her finally untie. What had started as mockery had transformed into respect, a celebration born out of vulnerability. That same night, Clara made a bold decision. She rummaged through her closet and retrieved an old, brightly colored scarf that had been hidden away for far too long. She paired it with her work attire the next day, stepping into the office with anticipation fluttering in her chest. As Clara reached the front of the office, she felt eyes on her. A buzz of whispers ignited. "Wow, Clara," someone exclaimed. As she crossed paths with Sam, their eyes met and he smiled broadly. "You look amazing, Clara." Something inside her swelled with warmth. The murmurs of embarrassment were gone, replaced by authentic celebration. Clara learned to take pride in her unique flair, arms wide open to embrace her individuality. The days rolled on, and every time Sam wore that eye-catching tie, it became a call to action, a reminder that their differences were not weaknesses but strengths. She found herself smiling when she caught sight of him, knowing he had shaped her perspective in profound ways. Then came the annual corporate gala, a night filled with glitz and glamour and opportunity to truly shine. Clara stood before her mirror, the vibrant scarf wrapped around her neck like an emblem of transformation. She paused for a moment, glancing at herself with newfound confidence. As she entered the glamorous venue that evening, she felt the thrill of possibilities. Eyes sparkled and laughter filled the air as colleagues mingled. Clara spotted Sam across the ballroom, his signature tie lighting up the room. The moment their gazes connected, she felt an unspoken bond solidify between them. As they danced, Clara felt liberated. The tie, the scarf, they became stories woven into their journeys. Each twirl symbolized the strength found in unity and the liberation born from authenticity. "Thank you for everything, Sam," she said, catching her breath between laughter. He smiled, golden light dancing in his eyes. "You always had it in you, Clara." And just like that, they reveled in the beauty of their own unique tapestries, realizing that sometimes it takes a vibrant tie to ignite a chain reaction of change. In a world filled with norms, Clara found her sparkle, owning her individuality, and learning that laughter shared could indeed be the bridge that led souls toward connection. With her scarf rustling rhythmically as they danced, she knew something magnificent had begun, a movement rooted in boldness, authenticity, and the power of celebrating each other, tie by tie. The moment Clara stepped into the conference room, she felt the usual hum of office chatter dim into an awkward silence. Her eyes darted to the head of the table where Sam, a new colleague, stood adjusting his tie, a ridiculously vibrant shade of yellow adorned with tiny dancing cartoon chickens. Her heart sank and she couldn't help herself. She whispered to Jenna, her friend seated beside her. The laughter that flowed from Clara's lips mixed with Jenna's suppressed giggles, echoing around the room like an alarm. Clara's words hung heavy in the air, a quick jibe wrapped in playful sarcasm. It felt safe, the laughter of a shared joke, but she noticed the way Sam's expression flickered. An instant ripple of hurt crossed his face before he masked it with a smile. "Thanks for noticing," Sam replied, his voice steady. He didn't flinch. Instead, he straightened up, his posture exuding confidence. There was something admirable in that, even if Clara couldn't quite place it at the moment. As the meeting unfolded, Sam presented his ideas with passion, his enthusiasm contagious, even if his tie was a spectacle. Numbers danced across slides, strategies painted bold futures, but Clara found her attention straying to that vibrant tie. How could someone pull off such a bold statement in a world of muted colors and conservative suits? Clara thought, feigning indifference. But when the meeting ended and the laughter returned in full force, she caught snippets of conversation from her colleagues resonating through the air. One snickered, another commented, laughter bubbling once more. Clara felt a flush of guilt wash over her as she joined in. This was how they bonded, how they laughed together. How easy it was to tear someone down to lift oneself up. Yet with every chuckle, she could feel something stirring uneasily in her stomach. By the time she returned to her desk, the joy she usually found in camaraderie felt hollow, tainted by the memory of that flicker of sadness in Sam's eyes. Days turned into weeks and Sam remained an enigma, a quirk in the usual office fabric. He walked the halls with that same unapologetically bright tie, a beacon of individuality amidst a sea of sameness. Clara found herself drawn to him, despite her earlier mockery. She peeked over her cubicle, watching as colleagues approached him, their laughter still sharp-edged, critiques flowing over and around him like a river, but Sam never retreated. Instead, he faced them head-on, a steadfast smile on his face. One afternoon, as Clara shuffled through the break room, she overheard two colleagues gossiping. "I heard he's actually really creative," one said, her voice dripping with disbelief. Clara felt an unexpected pang of concern for him, nudging gently against the wall she had built around herself. Several others chimed in, mockery turned into whispered admiration. "I think he's bold for wearing it," someone offered tentatively. Through it all, Clara grappled with herself. Here was a man who wore his eccentricity openly and boldly while she hid behind walls of conformity, laughing at his choice rather than understanding it. Why did she feel compelled to join in the ridicule rather than the respect? With every passing week, Clara's feelings tangled deeper. She watched Sam grow in confidence, leading brainstorming sessions and unearthing innovative ideas while she found herself treading water in complacency. There was a glow about him that ignited inspiration, spreading through the office like wildfire, and Clara desperately wanted to understand it. Then one Friday afternoon, as the sun began its descent, Clara found herself working late on a presentation. The office was quiet, the air still heavy with the remnants of the day. Suddenly, the faint sound of laughter broke through the silence. Sam entered, tie still brightly beating under the fluorescent lights, and Clara felt a twinge of guilt wash over her. He asked, a hint of genuine curiosity behind his bright eyes. "Sure," she replied, her voice lighter than she expected. They settled into the shared space, immersed in work, and surprise bubbled between them as they began to share ideas. For the first time, Clara had the chance to see that Sam was more than just that colorful tie. He was an innovator, a creative thinker unafraid of judgment. The more they talked, the more Clara began to recognize the resilience behind his playful facade. She ventured, almost hesitant. "It reminds me of the importance of standing out and being authentic," Sam replied, his voice unwavering. Intrigued, Clara leaned in. "The world is full of gray," he continued, "and I want to bring color to it." Something shifted inside Clara. Those words fell like rain, washing over her preconceived notions of who Sam was. Behind the laughter and the mockery lay a profound truth, one she realized spoke to her on a level she had long ignored. As they worked together late into the evening, the barriers between them began to dissolve. Clara saw the passion behind Sam's ideas, the creative bursts that emerged from his seemingly outrageous sense of style. The tie was not just a fashion statement, it was a declaration of self-worth, a reminder that it was okay to stand out in a world insisting on uniformity. But Clara also felt the weight of her past actions. She wanted to apologize to show Sam that she had begun to open her eyes. "I used to joke about your tie, you know," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I figured as much," he replied, a small smile creeping across his lips. "But laughter can come from different places, right?" His words hung in the air. Clara felt a cocktail of emotions swirling around her, a mix of remorse and enlightenment. In that small exchange, she realized how far she had come, how the very mockery she had participated in had transformed into respect and a hunger for authenticity. Days passed, and Clara began to embrace her uniqueness just as Sam had encouraged her to. She wore brighter colors, experimented with bold patterns, and discovered a renewed sense of confidence flooding through her. As the office dynamic began to shift, it was as though a window had opened, letting fresh air pour through the stale confines of conformity. Yet the turning point came during a company event, a celebration of their recent accomplishments. The atmosphere was thick with excitement, and Clara stood in front of the mirror, choosing an outfit carefully, contemplating going bold. She finally chose a bright red dress, one that made her feel alive. When she arrived at the event, she spotted Sam across the room, his chicken tie popping vibrantly against the backdrop of professional attire. She couldn't help but laugh, admiration washing over her. There he is, she thought. The evening unfolded, laughter and music blending together in a tapestry of joy. Clara mingled confidently, turning heads, and eventually made her way over to Sam. She said, grinning. He winked. "And you're stunning in that dress." They shared a moment, their laughter blending seamlessly into the night as she realized she had fully embraced the boldness they both represented. She caught glimpses of others exchanging glances, and it became evident that the staff murmurs had morphed from ridicule into a newfound appreciation. People began to talk about Sam differently, not just as the guy with the ridiculous tie, but as someone who had the courage to express himself. Clara could feel the shift in the room, a palpable shift from judgment to celebration. Conversations around Sam faded into soft admiration, compliments built like a snowball, gaining momentum as it rolled downhill. Weeks turned into months, and the impact of Sam's influence began to spread. Clara found herself not only standing beside him, but actively encouraging others to embrace their quirks and differences. Together, they initiated team-building activities, exploring creativity and individuality. Those concepts once whispered about in pity now fluttered brightly, taking center stage. One afternoon, as the staff gathered for an event showcasing individual talents, Clara felt alive. It was more than just a celebration, it was a tribute to the courage behind every unique personality. Clara watched as Sam stepped to the stage, radiant in his unmistakable tie, to share a few words. He called out to the group, and the applause roared. Every quirky tie, every mismatched outfit is a testament to who we are. Clara felt a swell of pride rising within her. Once she had mocked him, laughed at the very thing that now uplifted others. She'd seen the layers peel back, revealing the strength that Sam held both in his heart and in that garish tie. When she finally took the stage, it felt natural. "I want to thank Sam for showing us that it's okay to stand out, to challenge the norm." The applause that followed was louder and more genuine than anything she had heard before. In that moment, Clara felt free from the shackles of conformity, free from the weight of her past judgments. In celebrating Sam's tie, she had found her own voice and awakened her spirit of individuality. As she stepped down, Clara caught Sam's eye, a moment of unspoken understanding passing between them. That bright tie had lit the path for so many in the office, reminding them that embracing who they truly were was the first step to forging connections. Her laughter no longer sounded hollow, it rang vibrant, a celebration of every unique story woven between colleagues. In a world filled with gray, they had chosen to illuminate their colors, one tie, one quirk at a time. And as Clara reflected on the journey from mockery to admiration, from laughter to awakening, she couldn't help but smile, grateful for that vibrant tie that had sparked it all. The moment Clara stepped into the conference room, she spotted him across the table, Sam, the new guy. He wore a tie that seemed to vibrate with energy. It was bright green, dotted with cheerful yellow sunflowers, a daring splash of color against the sea of gray suits. Clara's lips curled into a smirk before she could stop herself. "Who dressed him this morning?" she whispered to Jenna, sitting beside her, chuckling softly. The laughter rolled off Clara's tongue effortlessly, and the sound echoed in the room, calling attention to Sam just as he was about to begin his presentation. "Yeah, it's a bold choice," Jenna replied, her eyes darting toward Sam. Clara's comment hung in the air, mingling with the murmurs around the table. Sam's face didn't reveal much. He simply adjusted his glasses and clicked to the first slide of his presentation, completely focused. But there was something in the determined set of his jaw that caught Clara off guard, making her chuckle feel like it had lodged in her throat. He started speaking, and as he did, something odd happened. The confidence in his voice transformed the room. His ideas flowed like a river, engaging everyone around him. He spoke about innovation, teamwork, and the future of the company, and Clara couldn't help but admire the passion in his eyes. Yet every time he paused, the laughter from their earlier remarks echoed painfully in her mind. A few moments later, someone in the back piped up, "Nice tie, Sam." The room erupted into laughter, and Clara felt her heart sink. Sam's confident demeanor faltered just for a second. The laughter ricocheted off the walls, thundering in Clara's ears, and shame washed over her. Actually, I chose it because it makes me feel happy, Sam said, his voice steady but laced with an edge of vulnerability. It was a poignant moment, and for a fleeting second, the atmosphere shifted. Her laughter, once jocular, now felt like daggers aimed at someone brave enough to stand out. As the meeting continued, Clara watched as Sam regained his footing, pushing onward with his presentation. But every beep of the clicker felt like a reminder of the moment when laughter turned cruel, and as he spoke, she thought she saw him transform those digs into fuel for his fire. Clara admired that tenacity, but couldn't shake the feeling that she had contributed to his moment of vulnerability. After the meeting, she walked back to her desk, the echoes of Sam's words still swirling in her mind. She thought, guilt gnawing at her conscience. At the same time, the whispers from her colleagues turned into an infectious contagion, the mockery of Sam's tie transforming into a collective sport. Someone said, another laughed. Clara started avoiding eye contact, the comments stabbing at her heart. The laughter she once enjoyed now felt hollow. Days turned into weeks, and Sam wore his yellow and green tie as proudly as a crown. It became the subject of countless conversations, and gradually the tone began to shift from playful ridicule to grudging admiration. While sitting in the break room, she overheard a conversation that made her pause. I overheard Sam's strategy for the upcoming project. He's surprisingly insightful, one of her coworkers said, disbelief lacing their voice. That tie's ridiculous, but the dude's got brains, another admitted. Clara felt a spark ignite within her. Despite the relentless jabs, Sam displayed a fearlessness she couldn't help but respect, and that's when it hit her realization that cut deeper than she expected. Sam was anything but ordinary. He had the courage to express himself, bright tie and all, while she was stuck in the shadows, clinging to the safety of her muted colors. One day, Clara found herself working late with Sam. The office was quiet, the fluorescent lights buzzing softly above them. As they processed reports and crunched numbers, Clara gingerly spoke up. "Why do you keep wearing that tie?" Sam looked up from his computer screen, eyebrows raised. "Not at all." He smiled, the warmth of his expression almost disarming. "For me, it represents me being true to myself. It's brighter than most of the things in this office, and I like that." Clara couldn't help but feel that spark again, the admiration turning into something deeper. She studied him, realizing that his eccentric choice of attire reflected a spirit she had long neglected. It wasn't just about the tie, it was about the boldness to embrace oneself fully. Days turned into weeks, and Clara started feeling an urge to change, to express herself without fear of judgment. As she began experimenting with her wardrobe, adding pops of color to her otherwise drab collection, she also noticed her colleagues shifting gears. The murmurs about Sam transformed into conversations about inspiration, creative thinking, and embracing differences. One afternoon, the office hosted a team-building event. As Clara walked into the room, she spotted Sam with a group of coworkers, animatedly discussing ideas while proudly sporting that same tie. Instead of the judgmental glances she had seen before, Clara felt an atmosphere of curiosity surrounding him. "Let's create something fun together," Sam suggested, and Clara felt the positivity radiating from him. Seeing him so engaged ignited a fire within her. With newfound confidence, Clara joined in, tossing her ideas into the mix. To her surprise, her colleagues embraced her suggestions, building on them, bouncing ideas back and forth. As she shared a concept, Sam leaned closer, nodding enthusiastically. "That's brilliant, Clara." It was a simple acknowledgement, yet it filled her with a warmth that left her beaming. As the project rolled forward, Clara continued drawing strength from Sam's example. She stepped out of her comfort zone, participating in discussions without fearing judgment. The camaraderie around her shifted from silence to exuberance, creativity sparking like fireworks. Then one day, whispers filtered through the office. Someone gasped. The murmuring turned into an avalanche of awe. Sam had shared his vision, and his vibrant tie seemed to symbolize that day freedom from conformity, a boldness to reveal oneself that had rippled throughout the office like a pulse. Clara basked in the energy around her, thrilled to be part of a community moving toward greater acceptance and creativity. The atmosphere was charged with newfound respect for Sam, transforming from mockery to recognition of his creative genius. And Clara felt it. Each time she looked at Sam, she saw a man who wore his identity as proudly as his tie, a symbol of courage that had sparked a change in herself and the office. But one Friday evening, when the day's work came to an end, Clara found herself overwhelmed with the desire to speak to Sam. As he stood by the coffee machine, she stepped forward, feeling both nervous and liberated. She began, twisting her hands nervously. He replied, setting down his mug, curious. "I wanted to apologize for my earlier behavior," Clara confessed, her voice steady yet softened by vulnerability. "I mocked you over your tie when I should have celebrated it instead." Sam looked surprised but pleased. "Thank you for saying that. Honestly, I've had my fair share of doubts about it. I think you've inspired me in a way I didn't expect," Clara admitted, her heart racing. "Wow, that means a lot to me," Sam replied, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "We all have our unique stories to tell." In that moment, Clara felt a deep sense of connection forming between them, one rooted in mutual respect and growth. They exchanged ideas, laughs, and a sense of camaraderie that seemed to solidify the bond they had formed amidst the chaos of office politics. As weeks turned into months, Clara reveled in her journey. Sam's tie had become more than just a fashion statement. It was a declaration of individuality that inspired everyone around him, including her. The once mocking laughter had transformed into appreciation, and that regular office chatter was now filled with encouragement and support. Then came the annual company gala, a celebration of their teamwork. Clara stood before her mirror, glancing at the bright dress pooling around her feet, an ensemble bursting with vibrant colors she had come to love. She stepped into the venue filled with excitement, catching glimpses of her colleagues, but her heart raced the moment she spotted Sam. He sparkled under the soft lights, his tie standing out as an emblem of courage. The room buzzed around them, laughter and conversation blending, but Clara felt her breath catch when their eyes met. "I see you've chosen color," Sam said, his eyebrows raising playfully. "It's your influence," Clara grinned, running a hand through her hair. The two shared a laugh, and soon enough they found themselves in the center of the dance floor, letting loose, celebrating the unabashed freedom of self-expression. With every twirl and step, Clara felt empowered, just as she imagined Sam felt every day in that bright tie. As the night rolled on, Clara looked around her, and the laughter resonating in the air danced with the heartbeats of vibrant individuals. It was a celebration of uniqueness, and she realized how far she'd come. From mocking Sam to finding her own voice amidst the noise, she had discovered a community ready to embrace differences. Standing alongside Sam, surrounded by laughter and acceptance, Clara felt light and free. She had transformed the way she saw the world, no longer a spectator but an active participant driven by joy and authenticity. In that moment at the gala, Clara understood that sometimes it takes a bold statement like a brightly colored tie to remind us all of the power of embracing who we are. In a world filled with quiet conformity, Sam had sparked something extraordinary, and together they had illuminated a path towards acceptance in every layer of their lives. And as the music played on, Clara knew she would never forget that tie. It had become the symbol of not just one man's bravery, but a shared journey towards celebrating the uniqueness in everyone, a journey that had changed her and perhaps the whole office. The morning sunlight filtered through the tall office windows, casting long shadows on the floor as Clara arrived at her corporate job. She shuffled into the building, scrolling through emails, her mind already racing with the day ahead. Meetings, reports, and the mundane routine loomed before her like an unyielding tide. As she walked into the main conference room, her eyes locked onto something unexpected. There he was, Sam, the new guy taking center stage in a ridiculous bright blue tie adorned with cartoon cats. It was loud, animated, and entirely out of place in the sea of gray and black suits that filled the room. Clara felt the familiar grinning urge to mock. She whispered to her friend Jenna, who was sitting beside her. Jenna covered her mouth to suppress a laugh, her eyes darting to Sam as he fiddled with his tie, seemingly unaware of the waves of judgment crashing around him. "Looks like he's ready for a kid's birthday party," Jenna shot back, her voice low enough for only Clara to hear. They shared a conspiratorial laugh, and for that moment Clara felt a sense of camaraderie, the thrill of sharing a joke at someone else's expense. But as the meeting began and Sam took the lead, a strange thing happened. His confidence radiated. The way he spoke, gesturing with his hands, brought life to the otherwise mundane agenda. He was passionate about his ideas, illuminating the room with a contagious energy that Clara found hard to resist. Maybe I misjudged him, she thought, trying to shake off her laughter from moments earlier, but then came the inevitable snicker. "Nice tie, Sam," someone on the other end of the table shouted, and laughter erupted, the sound bellowing like thunder in the room. Clara felt her stomach twist, a pang of guilt washed over her. "Actually, I think it shows personality," Sam said, his voice unwavering but tinted with a hint of hurt. Clara watched as the humor in his spirit flickered, momentarily dimmed by the onslaught of judgment. Just like that, she felt the laughter in the room shift. The joking no longer felt friendly. It stung like a bee, leaving a bitter taste behind. The meeting progressed, but every glance toward Sam reminded Clara of the cruel laughter she had indulged in. There was something deeply unsettling about witnessing someone being torn down, especially when that person was trying to shine. Yet she didn't speak up. The collective laughter still masked her guilt, and she melded into her seat, hoping to ride out the moment. As the weeks rolled on, the tie became a recurring theme in the office culture, morphing from mockery to something both intriguing and admired. Clara found herself observing Sam more closely. He wore that tie with pride, striding through the office as if he didn't have a care in the world. "Did you see him still wearing that tie?" someone whispered at the coffee machine. "Exactly. It's like he's begging for attention," another replied, their tone dripping with disdain. But Clara began to notice something else, something more than just a hideous tie. Sam exhibited a level of resilience she hadn't seen before. He remained unflustered, brimming with ideas during team meetings, occasionally even cracking a self-deprecating joke about his choice of neckwear. "At least you'll never forget my name," he would say with a grin, and laughter would ensue, this time softer, reflective. Clara felt a nagging urge to confront her past behavior. She had been the one to kick off the laughter that originally directed itself at him, yet here he was, transforming it into an opportunity to build connection. The guilt continued to gnaw at her, and she found herself standing at a crossroads. Would she continue the cycle of ridicule, or could she be brave enough to change? One evening, working late on a project, Clara had the chance to speak to Sam alone. The office was nearly deserted, shadows stretching long in the dim light. For the first time, she really looked at him. His bright tie seemed so out of place, but somehow perfect against his otherwise serious demeanor. She ventured, her voice tentative. He replied, his eyes lighting up with that genuine friendliness she had started to admire. "I wanted to apologize for the jokes about your tie. I realize now that it wasn't fair to you," Clara admitted, her heart racing. Sam looked surprised, but a smile crept onto his face. "Thank you for saying that." In that moment, Clara felt a warmth bloom between them, igniting something authentic. "Your courage inspires people to be themselves," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Really, that means a lot to me," he responded, his genuine surprise morphing into a grateful smile. Something clicked for Clara, and the weight of her previous actions began to lift. The laughter they'd shared about his tie had been a mask for her own insecurities. In her efforts to blend in, she had disregarded the very thing that made Sam a standout, his authenticity. Days went by, and Clara noticed shifts in her perspective. She started incorporating more color into her outfits, slowly breaking free from the safety of her monochrome wardrobe. Each time she wore a more vibrant hue, it felt like a rebellion against the conformity she had clung to. Sam's personality had sparked something inside her, a desire to live fully and authentically. And as Clara's confidence grew, she noticed her colleagues' perceptions of Sam shifting as well. Conversations became more accepting, transitioning from ridicule to recognition. "Did you check out Sam's idea for the upcoming project?" one colleague remarked. For the first time, Sam risked sharing something he loved, and they embraced it. It was during a brainstorming session weeks later that everything came full circle. Clara found herself sharing an idea, and to her surprise, everyone rallied around it, building upon her suggestions as Sam offered his input. He exclaimed, nodding with enthusiasm. Clara felt a surge of excitement. The office was coming alive, invigorated by the blend of ideas and personalities, fueled by a culture embracing differences. She turned to Sam, who leaned against the wall, a proud grin lighting his face. She complimented, genuine admiration spilling forward. "Thanks, I just believe we can't be afraid to express ourselves," he said, the laugh lines around his eyes deepening. As the weeks unfolded, the office atmosphere transformed completely. Team outings felt more inclusive, creativity flowed more freely, and that once harsh laughter turned into joyful support. They all celebrated the quirks they previously derided. Sam's tie had become emblematic of that shift. Every time he wore it, people smiled, recognizing it as a symbol of authenticity, a color amidst the monotony of corporate life. However, the final turning point came during the annual company gala, a night filled with glitz and glamour where everyone dressed to impress. Clara stared at her reflection, unsure of what to wear. For a moment, she considered her go-to black dress, but tossed that thought aside. Instead, she reached for a vibrant dress that reflected everything she had learned, bold, lively, and unapologetically herself. When she arrived at the gala, she spotted Sam instantly, his tie still a vibrant showstopper among the sea of classic ties. He beamed at her as she approached, and to Clara's delight, he had opted for a different, equally vivid tie that featured cartoon dinosaurs. "Look at you," Sam said, grinning widely. "You know I couldn't have done this without your influence," Clara replied, warmth flooding her heart. As they navigated through conversations, Clara felt free, immersed in a world where people embraced each other's differences. The collective laughter echoed around her, positive and uplifting, filling her with a sense of belonging. But it was when Sam took the stage that everything came together. He had been invited to share insights as one of the key figures driving the company's new culture. The spotlight found him, a dazzling mix of light and color, a perfect metaphor for all he represented. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice steady and clear. "I just want to take a moment to honor everyone who has inspired us to be authentic, creative, and true to ourselves." The applause was immediate and robust, but it didn't stop there. One by one, people rose to share their experiences, to reflect on the impact of camaraderie over ridicule. Clara felt a swell of pride within her, fueled by a profound sense of connection. As the night came to a close, Clara approached Sam once again, gratitude bubbling within her. "You've truly changed the game here, Sam, that tie pushing boundaries and encouraging us all to embrace who we truly are." He chuckled, his eyes sparkling. "I just wanted to remind everyone that being different is beautiful." In that moment, Clara understood the power they both held, not just individuals, but as a collective that sparked change. A journey that began with a silly tie had blossomed into an entire movement within the office, rooted in authenticity, celebrating the beauty of individual quirks that connect us all. As Clara stepped back into the vibrant night, surrounded by colleagues who felt more like family, she reveled in the energy that filled the air. In those moments, the laughter no longer felt like a knife. It felt like a melody celebrating every note, every quirk, every color of individuality. And as she embraced the sound of joy swirling around her, she knew she would forever cherish the memory of that tie, for it had inspired a ripple of transformation that was just beginning. In a world filled with grays, they had discovered the joy of standing out together, tie by tie, story by story. Clara's breath hitched as she walked into the conference room, the air thick with anticipation. It was Monday morning, and the whole staff was gathered for the weekly meeting. She glimpsed the usual sea of muted colors and corporate wear, but then her eyes landed on him, Sam, the new hire. He stood out like a sunflower in a field of grass, proudly donning a tie covered in bright, animated dinosaurs. A wave of laughter erupted from the group, a reaction so immediate that Clara felt her cheeks flush. She whispered to Jenna, her best friend and confidant, sitting next to her. Jenna snorted, barely containing her own amusement as they both exchanged glances. "Honestly, it's like he's begging for attention," she whispered back, and they shared a conspiratorial laugh that echoed in the room, accompanied by murmurs from others who caught a glimpse of the tie. Sam glanced their way, and Clara would swear she saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes before he steeled himself, squaring his shoulders as if he could absorb all the judgment. It struck her they were all aware that those mocking laughs stung like bullets, sharp enough to wound, yet he remained steadfast. As Sam began his presentation, Clara felt the atmosphere shift. His voice was steady, his ideas innovative and engaging. He spoke passionately about the upcoming project, lighting a fire in her coworkers. Clara found herself hanging onto his every word despite the initial ridicule. Yet each clap of laughter and the rolling giggles in the back of the room punctuated the seriousness of his effort. "Nice tie, Sam," a voice called out from the dark corner of the room, and laughter erupted again. Clara winced, a pang of guilt prickling at her conscience. Sam hesitated for a moment, the smile on his face momentarily faltering. "I chose this tie to bring a little joy to work," he said, his voice steady but tinged with hurt. Seeing the shift in Sam's demeanor sent ripples through her. This wasn't just a joke anymore, it was an assault on someone's self-expression. The laughter hung in the room heavy and oppressive. Through her discomfort, Clara's mind raced. Why did she laugh? Why did they all laugh? What was so funny about being different? As the days turned into weeks, Sam remained an enigma. He walked through the office with a certain confidence, that silly dinosaur tie swinging gently with each step. Clara couldn't help but admire how he faced the daily jeers, his resolve unyielding. The laughter that once seemed innocent transformed under her gaze into something darker, a collective bond forged through mockery. Every day, Clara overheard whispers. "Did you see Sam's latest idea?" Another voice replied, "Yeah, but that tie." She felt a blend of frustration and intrigue. How could they admire his brilliance while still tearing him apart? Yet when Sam presented his ideas, Clara noticed something shift. Instead of being driven back by mockery, he seemed to harness the energy, his passion infused with a fiercer boldness. He stood by his colorful choices with unwavering conviction, a behavior several colleagues began to admire. Although Clara tried to ignore it, a seed of insecurity began to blossom inside her. Her wardrobe echoed the same muted tones daily, and she found herself questioning her own choices. Why did she feel the need to conform? What would it be like to wear something that made her feel truly alive? Then came the day when a major project landed on their desks, a collaborative effort that required everyone's input. The deadline hung over them like a dark cloud, and they all scrambled to brainstorm ideas. Adrenaline surged through the office as they pushed forward day by day, the pressure mounting. One afternoon, Clara found herself working late with Sam in the nearly empty office. It was quiet, the only sounds being the clicking of keyboards and the occasional shuffle of papers. She watched Sam, his focus sharp, the dinosaur tie still dancing with every movement. Eventually, she summoned the courage to speak. Clara finally asked, a note of curiosity laced in her voice. He looked up from his notes, the warm light framing his face. "Because it makes me happy. It brings a bit of fun to a pretty serious setting," he said with a shrug, a smile tugging at his lips. Clara felt the weight of his words settle in her chest. For so long, she had criticized him for challenging the norms, but perhaps there was something profoundly brave about it. Days passed into weeks, and as Clara mulled over their conversations, she decided to take a step. Maybe it was time to find her own voice, to wear something that reflected who she was inside. So she began to experiment, first with a bright scarf, then with a pair of bold shoes. Each step felt empowering, liberating even. At the next team meeting, she wore a statement blouse in a vibrant red. The murmurs of the office shifted from mockery to surprise, and someone even complimented her. "Wow, Clara." Sam beamed at her from across the table, and she felt a rush of gratitude wash over her. In that moment, she realized they were on parallel journeys, both bravely choosing to embrace their individuality. Yet as Sam's ideas continued to flourish, so too did the whispers. "Did you see how Sam presented today?" The murmurs felt like ripples on the surface of a pond that was both calming and frightening. Clara could see the tides changing, and with them came a sense of power shifting in the office. Gone were the days of ridicule. They were entering a new era of acceptance. However, the tipping point began when their boss announced a company-wide presentation to showcase new ideas. Clara felt exhilarated and fearful all at once. Sam would be front and center again in his vibrant tie, and with the renewed respect in the office, she wondered how he would present beneath the spotlight. The day of the presentation arrived, and Clara felt a mix of excitement and anxiety in her chest. They filed into the conference room, the anticipation palpable. Sam stood at the podium, visibly calm but clearly aware of the stakes. As he began speaking, Clara could see the crowd's perception of him transform. Heads nodded and whispers turned from skepticism to support. But just as everything seemed to coalesce beautifully, the unthinkable happened. Mid-presentation, a soft, sarcastic voice broke through the supportive atmosphere. "Nice tie, Sam." Someone at the back snickered, and the room fell silent, tension crackling like electricity. Clara's heart raced as she felt the swell of discontent. They were on the verge of a breakthrough, and yet reality pulled it apart like a bad seam. Sam's face momentarily clouded, the smile vanished as he faltered. Clara could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, frustration boiling inside her. She glanced around the room. The laughter wasn't just directed at him, it was a mockery of everything he had fought to build. She could see the slight tremble in his hands. The moment hung in the air, heavy like a storm cloud, as Clara struggled with her own fears. It was time to choose a side. In an impulsive surge of courage, Clara stood up. "Actually, I find that tie brilliant, Sam." Gasps spread through the room, but there was a surprising wave of agreement. People looked around, their mockery fading into a tentative support, murmurs of understanding replacing the laughter. Another voice chimed in, a ripple of applause building like a wave crashing against a shore. In that moment, Clara met Sam's eye across the room. A flicker of gratitude ignited between them, and he regained his composure, each word he spoke infused with newfound strength. The presentation shifted back into focus, and Clara felt a warmth spread through her heart, a sense of triumph amidst the rumble of uncertainty that had just followed. But just as the tide turned, an ominous figure emerged from the background. Mr. Harding, the senior manager known for his old-school views and resistance to change. Clara's stomach dropped. He eyed the room, slowly rising from his seat, and all at once the applause stifled into a nervous whisper. "I don't think we should dismantle tradition for the sake of whimsy," he said, his voice cold, the authoritative tone clawing through the warmth that had just built. Clara's heart raced as she glanced at Sam, whose eyes widened with uncertainty. The supportive atmosphere began to crumble again. Clara struggled to find her voice as the air thickened with tension. Time slowed as she sensed the impending battle, her heart pounding like a drum. Would they retreat back into the shadows, or could they stand their ground? Clara could see the flickers of fear in everyone's eyes, the defeat threatening to overpower them all. In that moment, her mind raced. She could make a choice to hide or to stand alongside Sam, to support the change he embodied. Every moment that had led to this felt significant, and she realized she couldn't let that opportunity slip away. The murmurs around the room grew louder, drowning out the authority of Mr. Harding as Clara took a deep breath. She felt a wave of courage wash over her. She was done hiding. "Mr. Harding," Clara began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Change is often uncomfortable, but it's also necessary for growth. We're not just employees, we're individuals with ideas that deserve to be heard. Sam's tie isn't just a fashion statement, it's a symbol of creativity and the freedom to express ourselves." Clara's words echoed in the room, and she held her breath, unsure of how it would be received. Would Mr. Harding strike back? Would they return to mockery? Yet as she looked around, she saw faces turning toward her, curious and supportive. Her colleagues began to nod, expressions shifting as they processed her words. A few whispers trickled through, murmurs of agreement swelling in strength. Mr. Harding opened his mouth, but Clara could foresee the moment slipping through his fingers just as they had gained it back. The tide had turned, and just then the applause started, tentative at first, but quickly growing into a thunderous wave breaking across the room. Sam's eyes sparkled with gratitude, and Clara felt a surge of exhilaration as the applause continued. One moment they had teetered on the edge of defeat, the next they had thrust themselves back into a powerful current. Yet just as the collective energy reached a crescendo, the conference room doors suddenly burst open, and in rushed an unexpected figure, the CEO, Lisa. Her presence commanded instant attention, and Clara felt her heart stop. What could this mean? In that moment, Clara knew everything had changed. The office atmosphere pulsed with potential, but the fate of it all teetered on a knife's edge. Would they embrace this awakening, a breakthrough toward acceptance, or would they stumble back into the shadows, reversing all the progress they had fought for? As Lisa's gaze scanned the room, Clara felt the weight of the moment settle in, a singular heartbeat shared by all. What would happen next? Would they rise above the concerns of tradition, or be crushed under the weight of conformity? The answer hung in the air, and for the first time, Clara knew that the next chapter of their journey lay before them, ready to be written.